Hello and welcome. In this video I'm gonna show you how to install the annotation tool ROSeAnn and how to use it. ROSeAnn is a project entirely written in Java, so you need to download and install Java 7 or higher version of Java. Once you have downloaded the project from our website and unzip the content of the project, you should have a folder called ROSeAnn. And now we're going to inspect these folders. Inside these folders, we have different files. We have the conf folder that contains all the configuration files used by ROSeAnn. We have the bin folders that contain some executable classes that we can directly execute. We have the docs folder that contains all the Java documentation of ROSeAnn. We have the lib folder, contains all the third-party libraries used by ROSeAnn. And then we have the ROSeAnn sources folders that contains all the source code of the project ROSeAnn. And eventually we have also many other files that we're going to see later on in this video on how to use them. So now the first thing we're going to do, we're going to try ROSeAnn directly. We're going to try to use ROSeAnn, and in order to do this we can execute an executable Java class. So if you browse into the folder bin uk se ox cs diadem ROSeAnn, you should find an executable Java class, a ROSeAnn client.class, that we can directly execute to see if everything was installed correctly and if we can run the ROSeAnn project. So I am now in a Unix environment, so I can open my shell and I can browse to the home folder of the project. And it's very important that you launch this class from the home folder of the project, since ROSeAnn needs to read some parameters from configuration files, and these files are accessible only from the home folder. So now that I'm in the home folder, I can execute the Java class. So I'm going to run this command. What I'm doing here, I'm first setting the class path to tell Java where to find all the libraries, the third-party libraries used by ROSeAnn. I'm also increasing the Java heap space. ROSeAnn components require some memory, and therefore it's advisable to increase the heap space memory to avoid errors or out-of-memory errors. Then this is the class I'm going to execute, and this is the last parameter I have to give to this class. Is a text parameter, and it's basically the text that we want to annotate. So in this case we're going to annotate the text Barack Obama is the President of the United States. So I'm going to execute this class. If it's the first time that you are executing ROSeAnn, this might take a while, since at the beginning ROSeAnn needs to install some files on your file system, but then after the first time it should be faster. What's going on here? After the installation of these files, basically we are sending the text we want to annotate to the individual annotators, and in this moment now we are waiting for the response of the annotators. So depending on which annotators you want to invoke, you might have to wait a long or a short time, and we're going to see later on in this video how to choose the annotators to invoke. So now we have received the response from the annotator, and you should see an output like this one. We have a list of annotations. For each annotations we have the attributes of the annotations, like the concept of the annotation, the start and end offset, the original annotator, and so on and so forth. For each annotations we have a list of attributes. So for instance here we have an attribute that corresponds to the Wikipedia URL of the entity. And after this, eventually we also have a list of conflicts. In this case we have two kinds of conflicts, an omission conflict and another omission conflict. So we have two omission conflicts, and along with the conflict we have also many other information. Well, if you manage to run these classes and you had an output almost like this one and you didn't get any error, well then congratulations, that means you have correctly installed and used ROSeAnn for the first time. Like we said before, in the project we can find all the source file of ROSeAnn, so a very good starting point to understand how to use ROSeAnn is to look at the source code of the class we have just executed. So look at the ROSeAnn client source code. So we can open the ROSeAnn client.java file, and here we can see how to invoke ROSeAnn programmatically, and basically the code, we can see the code that we have just executed before. And in particular, this file contains a detailed guide on how to use the basic functionalities of ROSeAnn. And maybe more interesting, other than just annotating plain text documents, in this file you can also find a guide on how to annotate web pages and also PDF documents. That these are the other two kind of documents ROSeAnn is able to annotate. So have a look at this class to understand the basic functionalities of ROSeAnn. Then, like we have said before, ROSeAnn needs to read some configuration parameters from configuration files. So let's go and see these configuration files. All these configuration files are stored in the conf folder of ROSeAnn, and in particular we have three configuration files, which are three XML files. And now let's go and see these files. The first one is called the text annotator configuration, and this file contains all the parameters that can be set for the individual annotator. So for instance, we can set the URL endpoint of the annotators, so the one we want to invoke. We can set the license key for some of these annotators. Since some of these guys are commercial tools, they need a license key, and here is the place where we can set. And then depending on which annotators, we can set other different parameters. In particular, if you're gonna look, the last annotator of this file is an annotator called parallel annotator, and this is the component of ROSeAnn which is able to invoke each of the individual annotators in a parallel thread and get the response from these individual guys. So in this section we can set which annotators we want to invoke, like we have said before, and other than the individual annotators we can also set a timeout parameters, which basically says how many milliseconds I'm willing to wait to get an answer from each of these individual guys. So in this example, we're setting the timeout parameter to 30 seconds. That means that if one of these guys requires more than 30 seconds to produce an answer, then that guy is simply discarded and its answer is not considered anymore. After this, we have a configuration.xml file. This file contains all the generic parameters to configure for the ROSeAnn project. It contains, for instance, the ontology we want to use for ROSeAnn, the reconciliation method we want to invoke to ROSeAnn, and also some visualization parameters that we can use to visualize the documents. And we're going to see later on how to visualize the annotated document. And eventually we have an aggregator configuration file. This file is used to configure the parameters for the reconciliation methods. So in this example, for instance, we are saying that for our machine learning aggregation method, MEMM, we are setting the folder where ROSeAnn needs to find the trained model for our machine learning algorithm. So we just said ROSeAnn offers the functionality to visualize our annotated documents. So let's go and see how to use these functionalities. ROSeAnn, other than being using programmatically, can also be invoked as a graphical user interface. And if you look at the ROSeAnn project, inside this folder you will find two executable files. One is for Windows operating system, and the other one is for Unix environment. It's a shell script Unix environment. So let's go and see how to use this GUI. And in my Unix environment, I'm gonna run the shell script ROSeAnn GUI.sh, running this script. Now it's launching our user interface. This is how our user interface looks like. And what can we do with this interface? Well, we can, for instance, open a new text document, and I can write on this document. I'm going to write, for instance, Barack Obama is the new President of United States. Other than creating a new files, I can also load a file from my file system, and then what I can do, I can annotate this document by pressing this button. So what's going on now? Now it's going on exactly the same thing we have seen before. We are sending this text to the individual annotators, and we are waiting the response from the individual annotators. And again, here we can reduce this waiting time by setting the timeout parameters, and also we can choose which annotators we want to invoke. So now we are waiting the response from these individual guys. Now the response has come, and along with all the annotations. And what we can do with our GUI, we can visualize the annotations over the document. So in this right panel, in the above section, we have which annotators have produced a response, and also which reconciliation methods have produced a response. And if I'm gonna tick one of these annotators, I'm gonna see on the text with a different background color the annotations found by these annotators. Then if I go in this below panel, we have all the concepts identified on this piece of text. And if I'm gonna choose one of these concepts, the annotations having that particular concept will be shown on the text with particular brackets. And then if I hover the mouse over annotations, I will see more information about the annotations. For instance, what annotations have produced the basic annotators, and also which response have produced the aggregators method. And eventually, in this panel below, we also have the list of conflicts. And if I click on one of these conflicts, the text producing that conflict will be blinking, and if I hover the mouse over the conflict, I will get more information about the conflicts, in particular which annotations have been found over that piece of text, and which kind of conflict have been found over the text. So this is basically what I can do with my GUI, but other than annotating simple plain text, we said before that ROSeAnn also support web documents and PDF documents. So we can annotate web documents by pressing this button. Pressing this button will launch a web browser, Firefox web browser. And the first time we launch the browser, this might take a while, since ROSeAnn needs to talk with Firefox driver. And a warning, if you want to use our web functionalities, we have tested our ROSeAnn GUI on Mozilla Firefox up to version 24. So if you want to use, if you have installed Firefox with higher version than 24, we cannot guarantee that this will still work. So if you want to be sure that you can use our web functionalities, please install the correct version of Firefox. So now we can browse to any page we want, like exactly a normal browser. Once we have found the page we want to annotate, again, we are going to press the same button, and we are going to annotate this web page, and then visualize the annotations over this web page. Again, what's going on here? We are annotating the textual content of the web page, and then waiting the answer from the individual annotators. Now the answer has arrived, and exactly the same way like we have done for a text document, we can visualize the annotations over the web page. So suppose I want to find all the organization annotations over the web page. I can tick the organization, and then all the organization annotation will be shown on the web page. So for instance, here Google is identified by as an organization. And then I can do exactly the same things I've done before for our text document. So we can close the browser. And we can also annotate PDF documents, like I've said before. So I can open a PDF document from my file system, load the PDF documents, and then annotate the PDF documents, and then visualize the annotations over the PDF document exactly in the same way like we've done for normal text document and web pages. Okay, good. Now you have learned how to use ROSeAnn, how to use the basic functionalities, and now you can go and play with it by yourself. If you are interested and want to know more about ROSeAnn, you can visit our website. You can find us at diadem.cs.ox.ac.uk/ROSeAnn. This is our website, and on this website you will find detailed explanation about ROSeAnn. We have evaluated ROSeAnn, and you will find all this kind of information. And if you browse at the bottom of the page, also you will find detailed explanation and documentation on how to use our Java API, how to set all the configuration parameters. We have set up ROSeAnn also as a MEMM project, so if you are familiar with MEMM, you can use directly that project. And here there are all the instructions how to install and how to download it. We also have a web service API, so if you don't like Java and you want to use any other programming language, you can query directly our web service. We have two main REST service endpoints that you can query at any time. They are already in use, and in this page everything is well explained in detail: how to set up the parameters, how to invoke the service, how to get the response, and how to read the response. And we also, you can download ROSeAnn in an old-fashioned way, all the source code, and run it by yourself as you like the most. Well, with this, our tutorial has come to an end. Thanks for your attention, and I hope you will enjoy using our annotation tool ROSeAnn.